My wife cheated while I grieved my brother's death. Blamed me. Then years later at a wedding, she tried to reconcile, but my new life shocked her. I could never have predicted the way my life would change in just a few years. One moment, I was deeply in love, happily married to a woman I believed was my soulmate. We were living our lives, making plans for the future, and tackling challenges side by side. Little did I know, the world I had built would soon crumble beneath me, and I'd be left standing alone, grieving, betrayed, and uncertain of the way forward. This is my story, a story about love, loss, betrayal, and, most importantly, resilience. It all began 8 years ago when I met Teresa. She was striking, not just in looks but in her presence. Her confidence was magnetic, and her laughter was the kind that filled a room. We met at a party hosted by a mutual friend during our sophomore year in college. I was studying engineering, she was studying business, and we quickly bonded over our shared love for outdoor activities and our curiosity for exploring different cuisines. Our first date was a disaster. I lost my wallet and managed to spill wine all over her dress. But Teresa just laughed it off, and we ended up roaming around the campus, talking late into the night. That was when I knew she was someone special, someone I wanted in my life. We were both ambitious in our own ways. Teresa had come from a working-class family and was determined to make something of herself. I admired her drive. She inspired me to be more than I thought I could be. She encouraged me to apply for competitive internships, leadership positions, and to get out of my comfort zone. Over the years, we both graduated, moved to the city, found good jobs, Teresa with a lighting company, and me with an engineering firm, and eventually moved in together. Our wedding was simple, intimate, and beautiful, surrounded by friends and family. Those early years of marriage were some of the happiest of my life. We advanced in our careers, enjoyed the bustling life of the city, and cherished our weekends traveling or hosting friends for game nights and dinners. Teresa was independent, and that was one of the things I loved most about her. We each had our own hobbies. She enjoyed yoga and painting, while I found solace in basketball and tinkering with vintage cars. We gave each other space and support, a balance that seemed to work perfectly. Everything changed when Mason, my older brother, was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. Mason wasn't just my brother, he was my best friend, my confidant, and the person I looked up to the most. Growing up, Mason was always there for me, especially during difficult times like when our parents divorced. He took on a lot of responsibility, even when he was in college himself, and made sure I was okay. He taught me how to ride a bike, helped me with schoolwork, and was always just a call away whenever I needed advice. When Mason was diagnosed, it felt like the world was collapsing around me. He had always been the epitome of health, running marathons, eating well, never smoking. It all seemed so unfair. From that moment on, I decided to be there for him as much as possible. I drove him to chemotherapy appointments, stayed with him at the hospital, and did everything I could to lift his spirits. Teresa was supportive at first. She accompanied me to visits and even helped Mason's wife, Sarah, with food and chores. But as the weeks turned into months, Teresa's patience began to wear thin. She began to complain that I was spending too much time with Mason and that I was neglecting our relationship. I tried my best to explain to her how important it was for me to be there for my brother during this time. But it felt like she just couldn't understand. The arguments became more frequent. She felt neglected, and I felt torn between the two people I loved most. It was a no-win situation. Eventually, Mason passed away 8 months after his diagnosis. I was devastated. Losing Mason was like losing a part of myself. I sank into a deep depression, unable to find joy in anything. I took a leave of absence from work, and some days I couldn't even get out of bed. Teresa, at first, tried to help me through the grief, but it wasn't long before her patience ran out. She kept urging me to move on, to get back to our social life, to be the man I used to be. But I couldn't. I wasn't ready to pretend everything was okay. I wasn't ready to host dinner parties or go out with friends. Teresa took it personally. She accused me of pushing her away, of refusing to put in any effort for our relationship. The tension grew until one day, I got a call from Liam, Mason's best friend. Liam was like another brother to me, always there to support me. But that day his voice was hesitant. He told me he had seen Teresa at a motel with another man. I didn't want to believe it. I had trusted Teresa with everything. But then Liam sent me a picture he had taken. There was no denying it. Teresa was with another man, in an embrace that spoke volumes. My heart shattered. When Teresa got home that evening, I confronted her. She denied it at first. But eventually, she broke down and admitted to having an affair with a coworker for the past 2 months. Her reasons made me feel even worse. She said she felt lonely, ignored, and unhappy, and that I was the one who had driven her to cheat by being emotionally unavailable. I was furious and heartbroken. I told her I wanted a divorce. She begged me to reconsider, claiming it was a mistake and that she still loved me. But there was no coming back from that betrayal. The next day, Teresa continued to call and text me, alternating between pleading for forgiveness and blaming me for what happened. She even tried to justify her actions by saying that I had abandoned her emotionally first, and that she deserved happiness. I felt lost, unsure of who this woman in front of me was. How could the person I loved so deeply betray me at my lowest point? How could she make me the villain in all of this? I moved forward with the divorce, though it was far from easy. Teresa reacted with a mix of anger and desperation. She spread rumors among our friends, claiming I had emotionally abused her by neglecting her, forcing her to seek comfort elsewhere. Some of our friends took her side, believing her version of events. It was painful to lose those friendships, but I knew I needed to cut ties with anything that tied me to that toxic past. Teresa even tried to claim half of Mason's inheritance, which made me feel like she was trying to profit from my brother's death. Luckily, my lawyer assured me she had no legal right to it. It was during this dark time that I reconnected with Olivia, an old friend from high school. We ran into each other at a coffee shop, and it turned out that Olivia had also experienced loss. Her mother had passed away from cancer a few years earlier. She understood what I was going through in a way that few others could. We started meeting up, initially just to catch up and talk. But eventually, those meetings turned into a source of real comfort for me. Olivia was someone I could talk to without judgment. Someone who didn't pressure me to move on faster than I was ready. With Olivia's support, I began to heal. We shared a lot in common. We had both been on the debate team in high school, loved old movies, and enjoyed discovering new music and podcasts. She helped me get back in touch with parts of myself that I had forgotten during my marriage, my love for playing guitar, my passion for photography, and my curiosity for trying new things. Slowly but surely, I started to see a future for myself again, a future that wasn't defined by my grief or by Teresa's betrayal. But Teresa didn't let go easily. When she found out about Olivia, she showed up at my house unannounced, yelling that I was a hypocrite for moving on so soon. She accused me of having an affair with Olivia, which was completely false. I had to threaten to call the police before she finally left. It felt like she was determined to pull me back into the chaos I was trying so hard to escape. I realized then that the best thing I could do was cut her out of my life completely. I focused on rebuilding, not just my life, but myself. I joined a gym, started learning guitar again, and even took a solo trip to the mountains. Something I'd always wanted to do but had never had the chance. It was freeing to be alone with my thoughts, to rediscover who I was outside of my relationship with Teresa. I began volunteering at the cancer center where Mason had been treated, and it helped me feel connected to his memory in a positive way. Mason's wife, Sarah, and their children also became an important part of my support system. We started having dinner together frequently, sharing stories about Mason and keeping his memory alive. My relationship with Olivia grew deeper as well. What started as a friendship eventually turned into something more. We took things slowly, which was exactly what I needed. She was patient with me as I worked through my trust issues, and she never made me feel like I had to rush my healing process. Olivia and I recently moved in together and even adopted a dog. She's been a constant source of support, always understanding when I have moments of insecurity or doubt. Our relationship isn't perfect. We've had our share of arguments and challenges, but we always try to communicate openly and work through things together. It's refreshing to be with someone who values honesty and mutual respect. A few months ago, I ran into Teresa at a mutual friend's wedding. It was awkward, to say the least, but we managed to remain cordial. She apologized again for her actions during our divorce, telling me that she had been in therapy and was working on herself. I wished her well but made it clear that I wasn't interested in rekindling any kind of relationship. Not even a friendship. Seeing her again brought up a lot of emotions, anger, sadness, and even a sense of nostalgia for the good times we once had. But more than anything, it gave me closure. It made me realize how much I had grown and healed since the divorce. Today, I'm in a much better place. I've learned that healing isn't linear. There are still days when I miss Mason deeply. Or when I wake up feeling angry at Teresa for what she did. But those days are fewer and farther between. I found new purpose in my work, recently getting promoted, and I found joy in the small moments of everyday life, cooking dinner with Olivia, taking our dog for long walks, and planning for the future. For the first time in a long time, I feel optimistic about what lies ahead. One of the biggest lessons I've learned through all of this is that true love supports you through the hardest times. When Mason got sick, I needed someone who could understand the importance of family. Someone who could be my rock when I needed it most. Teresa wasn't that person, and that's okay. It doesn't excuse what she did. But I've come to accept that maybe we were never truly right for each other. Our relationship had cracks that neither of us wanted to acknowledge. And those cracks became impossible to ignore when life threw a real challenge our way. Another lesson I've learned is that healing takes time. And there's no set timeline for when you should be over something. After losing Mason, I felt pressure from Teresa, from some friends, and even from myself, to move on, to get back to normal. But grief isn't something you just get over, it's something you learn to live with. And it's okay to take the time you need to do that. I've learned to be patient with myself, to let myself feel the pain, and to know that it's all part of the healing process. And finally, I've learned that there is life after betrayal. When Teresa cheated, I thought my world had ended. I couldn't imagine ever trusting someone again, let alone falling in love. But here I am, building a life with someone who genuinely cares for me, who supports me, and who loves me for who I am. I've learned that the end of one chapter, no matter how painful, can be the beginning of something beautiful. And for anyone out there going through something similar, just know that there is hope. It might not feel like it right now, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. And when you get there, you'll be stronger than you ever thought possible. My spiteful sister-in-law accused me of stealing her diamond ring. But when this was revealed, she wasn't ready for the shock. There are moments in life when a single event can cause ripples that forever alter relationships, trust, and love. This is one such story, one where a mere piece of jewelry almost destroyed a family but eventually led to unexpected personal growth, redemption, and an understanding that some lessons are meant to be learned the hard way. I married Shane 5 years ago, and from the day I met his sister, Tori, there was always something about her that made me uneasy. I never quite understood why she seemed to dislike me so intensely. But her disdain was something that settled into my life like an unwelcome houseguest. For the most part, I tried to shrug off her sharp remarks and criticisms about my background, my career, or even my clothing. Maybe I thought she was protective of Shane, her younger brother, or maybe it was simply that I wasn't what she expected for someone like him. Shane and I come from different worlds, but we make it work. My upbringing was modest. We didn't have the luxury of affluence, but we were always rich in love and laughter. I worked my way through college, juggling part-time jobs and scholarships. And later, I carved out a career in the tech industry with sheer determination. Tori, on the other hand, was raised in an affluent household, where wealth and privilege were givens, not aspirations. She went from her cushy upbringing to marrying Mike, another person from her world of high-end parties and expensive luxuries. She never worked, spending her time at spas, exclusive social gatherings, and shopping trips that stretched into small adventures. Even after Shane and I got married, Tori's bitterness remained. At our wedding, a simple yet beautiful ceremony filled with friends and family, Tori arrived dressed in white. People whispered, but I ignored it, choosing not to give her antics the attention she so obviously craved. My husband adored me, and we were building a life together, one not necessarily filled with luxury, but full of love and joy. But then came that weekend at the lake house. Shane's parents had invited us all for a family getaway, a chance to reconnect. They said. I hesitated at first, knowing Tori would be there, but Shane convinced me it would be a good opportunity for bonding. Initially, it was pleasant enough. There was swimming, meals together, and even some moments of laughter. But everything changed on Saturday afternoon. We were playing board games in the living room when Tori almost as if she needed everyone to notice. Started showing off her sparkling diamond ring. She flaunted it, boasting about how it was a surprise anniversary gift from her father, a symbol of wealth, of privilege, of everything I supposedly wasn't. I politely complimented the ring, trying not to show my discomfort as she rolled her eyes, dismissing me like an intruder in her perfect world. After that, I went upstairs to rest. I was exhausted from the day's activities and hoped a nap would help. It wasn't long before I woke up to the sounds of shouting. My heart pounded as I hurried downstairs, only to find Tori screaming, her eyes wild with fury and panic. Her precious ring was missing. In the middle of the chaos, she turned her gaze to me, her eyes narrowing, and pointed an accusing finger. I had taken it, she claimed. I was the only one who had been alone in the house. My breath caught in my throat as I denied it, but Tori was relentless. She demanded that I empty my pockets, that I allow her to search my bag. I felt a deep sense of humiliation as I complied. Of course, the ring wasn't there, but Tori wasn't satisfied. Her husband, Mike, stepped in, accusing me of hiding the ring somewhere. Shane defended me, his voice strained with frustration, but it seemed as though everyone else, even Shane's parents, was looking at me with suspicion. It felt like the walls were closing in, that every bit of trust I had worked to build with Shane's family was crumbling before my eyes. Hours passed as we searched the house. Tori cried, Mike glared, and Shane's parents whispered among themselves. By evening, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Shane's father pulled him aside, demanding that I either return the ring or pay for it. The accusation broke something inside of Shane. He lashed out, his voice breaking as he defended me. And in that moment, he decided we were done. We packed our things and left the lake house behind, ignoring the pleas from his parents to stay. The car ride home was silent, save for Shane's apologies. He kept saying he couldn't believe his family would treat me this way. But the pain was there, raw and real. He loved his family, and the rift that had opened up between us and them was something he couldn't easily reconcile. In the days that followed, messages poured in from his family, accusations, demands to pay for the ring, pleas to come back and make things right. Tori took to social media, painting me as the villain who had stolen her beloved gift. Even some extended family members contacted Shane, urging him to pay for the ring to keep the peace. A week later, Shane blocked them all. He couldn't take it anymore. He told me he wouldn't speak to anyone until they apologized. But I could see how much it was hurting him. He wasn't sleeping, he wasn't eating, and the stress was eating away at him. I started to wonder if maybe we should just pay for the ring, just to make it all go away. But deep down, I knew that if we did, we would be admitting to something I hadn't done, and Tori's hatred for me would only grow. 2 weeks after the lake house incident, I received a call from Shane's cousin Leia. She wanted to meet, saying she had information about the missing ring. I was hesitant, unsure if I could trust anyone from Shane's family. But something in Leia's voice convinced me. We met at a small cafe, and she looked nervous, her eyes darting around as if she feared someone might overhear us. She then told me something that left me stunned. Mike, Tori's husband, had taken the ring. Apparently, he and his friend Ethan, who was also close to Mike, had gotten involved in some shady business dealings. They had borrowed money from a loan shark, and when the deal went south, they found themselves unable to pay. In desperation, Mike had taken Tori's ring and sold it, using the family weekend as a perfect cover to stage its disappearance and blame me for it. I felt a mix of emotions: relief, anger, disbelief. Part of me was glad that I wasn't losing my mind, that I hadn't taken the ring. But another part of me was furious at Mike for putting me through this. Furious at Tori for believing it so easily. Furious at the entire situation. Leia told me she hadn't known what to do, that she had felt guilty for keeping it a secret, but she was terrified of what might happen if the truth came out. I thanked her and promised that Shane and I would handle it. When I got home, I told Shane everything. He was skeptical at first, unable to believe that Mike would do something like this. But as we talked, things began to click into place. Mike's behavior, his quickness to accuse me, the tension between him and Tori that we had noticed over the past few months. Shane decided we needed proof before we confronted anyone. He started making calls, reaching out to people who might know about Mike's finances. We even hired a private investigator. It took weeks, but eventually, We gathered everything we needed. Bank statements showed large withdrawals from Mike and Tori's joint account around the time of a Las Vegas trip they had taken. Credit card bills revealed charges from casinos. Security footage from a pawn shop showed Mike selling the ring. We had everything we needed. Shane called a family meeting. He told everyone it was time to clear the air about the ring and move forward as a family. Tori and Mike agreed, perhaps thinking it would be a chance for me to finally confess. I was nervous that day, my hands shaking as we walked into Shane's parents' house. Everyone was already there, Tori glaring at me, Mike avoiding my eyes. Shane started by thanking everyone for coming, and then, without warning, dropped the bombshell. He knew what had happened to the ring. The room went silent, shock evident on everyone's faces. Shane laid out the evidence we had gathered, the bank statements, the credit card bills, the pawn shop footage. He even put Ethan on speakerphone, who reluctantly confirmed the story. As Shane spoke, the expressions in the room shifted: shock, disbelief, and then rage. Tori turned to Mike, tears streaming down her face as she asked if it was true. Mike broke down, confessing everything. He had taken the ring, sold it, and blamed me, thinking he could cover his tracks later. Tori was devastated, and Shane's parents were horrified. They apologized to me over and over, ashamed of how they had treated me. Shane's father hugged me, his voice cracking as he said he should never have doubted me. Mike left that day, his head hung in shame, while Tori stayed behind, too distraught to even look at him. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. Mike moved out of their home, and Tori filed for divorce. Shane's family reached out to me, apologizing for their behavior. Some sent flowers, others called or came by in person. Tori herself called me, her voice trembling as she apologized, not just for the ring incident, but for everything she had put me through over the years. She admitted she had always been jealous of my relationship with Shane. Jealous that I had built my life from the ground up, something she never had to do. I told her I forgave her, but it would take time to rebuild trust. She understood and promised to try to be better. Surprisingly, she kept her word. She started inviting me out for coffee, for lunch, just the two of us. Our conversations were awkward at first, but slowly, they began to change. She spoke openly about the pressures she faced growing up, the expectations, the insecurities. I shared my own struggles, and bit by bit, we found common ground. Shane's parents also went out of their way to make me feel included. They invited us over for dinner, called just to check in, and even sought my advice on various matters. It was as if they were trying to make up for the way they had treated me. And in a way, it helped. I began to feel like I truly belonged, not because of my marriage to Shane, but because I had earned my place. But the ring was never recovered. By the time we learned the truth, the loan shark had already sold it. Tori was heartbroken, but she said she had learned something important, that material possessions meant nothing compared to trust and family. Leia, the cousin who had initially come forward, became a good friend. She admired the way I handled everything, and we started spending more time together. We even began organizing girls' nights with some of the other cousins, creating new bonds that felt genuine and warm. The experience changed me too. I realized that I had always felt a sense of insecurity around Shane's family because of my background. But standing up for myself, gathering the evidence, and proving my innocence gave me a newfound confidence. I no longer felt like I needed to prove myself to anyone. I had earned my place through my own efforts, and that was enough. Shane and I had long conversations about everything that had happened. We decided we needed boundaries. That while we would maintain relationships with his family, we would also protect our own peace. We started seeing a couples therapist, working through the stress of the whole ordeal. And in the end, it brought us closer. A few months later, Shane received a promotion, one that required us to relocate to another state. It was a big decision, but we took it. We saw it as a chance to start fresh, away from the memories of the lake house and the ring. Some family members were sad to see us go, while others understood our need for space. Tori, in particular, seemed upset but promised to keep working on our relationship long distance. As we packed our home, ready for the move, I thought back on everything that had happened, the accusations, the pain, the truth, and the growth. It was strange to think that a missing ring had led to so much turmoil, but also to so much healing. I had learned to stand up for myself, to gather the facts before making judgments. And most importantly, the power of forgiveness. Family dynamics are complicated, and sometimes, setting boundaries is necessary for your own well-being. Shane and I are excited for this new chapter, ready to build our own traditions and create a life that is truly ours. Tori and I had an emotional goodbye before the move. She thanked me for giving her another chance, and even joked about visiting us in our new city to prove she could have fun without the luxuries she was used to. Life is unpredictable. I never imagined that a single weekend could change so much. But in the end, I am grateful. Grateful for the lessons learned, the relationships mended, and the chance to start anew. And if there's one thing I know now, it's that sometimes, the hardest experiences lead to the most meaningful growth.